nation, serving with a vision, working for a better nation. 8867 today, 8867 tomorrow, 8867 tomorrow, 8867 forever.
The ICJ issue. How did we get here? In a nutshell, Belize have been following from the United Nations Chapter 6, which is called Pacific Settlements of Dispute. So when the United Nations was chartered, there came a chapter 6, that explains what our nation's supposed to do to settle disputes when they're at peace. So right there, the first article under Chapter 6, Article 33, at Section 1, and if I could just read it quickly. The parties to any dispute, the continuance of which is likely to endanger the maintenance of international peace and security, shall first of all seek a solution by negotiation, inquiry, mediation, conciliation, arbitration, judicial settlement, which is where we're at with the ICJ, resort to regional agency or arrangements or other peaceful means of their own choice. So Article 33(1) is what we've been following, trying to do negotiations, trying to do mediations, arbitrations with genocidal generals from Guatemala with agreed for Belizean land, who have said from 1974 that there can be no settlement of this Anglo-Guatemalan dispute unless Belize cedes land to Guatemala. So we are currently, since December 2008, caught in a bind because the people that were negotiating with these generals had a position at the other extreme where there can be no settlement where Belize loses lands. So of course, our argument have been that the negotiations weren't being carried out in good faith, where you have some generals who want to take over Belize land, but maintain we must cede land. So needless to say, when this special agreement, which is a treaty, was signed in December 8, 2008, we were saying, well, good. It's just one executive treaty signed onto it. It doesn't have the legislative backing as yet. It hasn't been ratified at the Senate level, which is what our laws say. So we were hoping that when we get it to the Senate, we would have been able to introduce the issue of monetary compensation as a means for the judges to say if Article 7 was indeed breached, but it does not invalidate the entire 1859 treaty, but it needs to be addressed, it needs to be corrected. In that situation, the ICJ judges would have been afforded the luxury of saying, Guatemala, you can't get land, but you could get money, right? But the way this agreement is worded, there's only three things the ICJ judge are being tasked with. One, to determine if there's any legality to the Guatemalan claim. Two, if there is legality to the Guatemalan claim, what are the rights that Guatemala have in Belize? And three, based on those rights, where do the new boundaries for Belize fall? So those are the only things we have given to the ICJ to do. The ICJ has no authority, no jurisdiction over this matter until we signed on to go in there by way of voting yes in this referendum. So that is why we're saying, Belize, you know what? Let's pause. Let's take a pause. This special agreement was wrong. This is what is wrong. Going to the ICJ is not necessarily wrong, but under the terms of this agreement, we don't see how the Honorable Philip Goldson would have accepted going to the ICJ under one treaty like this. So let's reject this ICJ, going to the ICJ under this compromise today, and let's hope that we could get civilian control of the Guatemalan Congress while we educate our people and build up our army to defend with borders and things and stop the encroachment. Then we can say maybe we'll consider the ICJ. However, I want to leave you with this caveat, Belize. We were also saying since 2005, when we experienced the Guatemalan aggression down at the Sarstoon, and effectively heard them saying that they are claiming the Sarstoon as an internal river on the island. Well, from then we were telling Belize, hey, we got a way out for you, Belize. We're no longer at Pacific Settlement on Dispute. We are now supposed to move to Chapter 7 of the UN Charter that talks about acts of aggression, action with respect to threats to the peace, breaches of the peace, and acts of aggression. There is where Belize and Guatemala is at. We are not no kumbaya, my lord, where we're buddy. It's like they're holding us around the arm and holding one gun to our ribs and say, smile for the camera. That is what is happening to us. And Sadi is going along, smiling around in front of the camera around the world like it's kumbaya. It's not. We need to move to chapter 7, where we're facing acts of aggression, where Guatemala is exercising effective control over the Sarstoon Island and the northern portion of the Sarstoon, and so we need to have that rectified. So we could get out of that special agreement by simply going to the United Nations and applying under Article 39 to have the United Nations issue sanctions under Section 41, Article 41, or if that doesn't work, which usually that will, 42 would bring in military options. But we don't see it going there. We're seeing it with economic sanctions, Guatemala behaving themselves and giving back control of Belize to the Sarstoon and the islands. And then at that point, guess what? Belize can petition the UN Security Council to petition an opinion, to seek a legal opinion as to the validity of the 1859 treaty from the ICJ without exposing our territory to risk. You see, should the ICJ then determine that the 1859 is still valid but Article 7 still needs to be addressed, then they can recommend that England and maybe Belize split the payment to Guatemala for fulfilling of Article 7. Now, isn't that an option for us, Belize? We have more in the next segment.